12 hours. That is roughly all it takes for your blood to run completely clean of alcohol after the last drink of the night. The liver filters it out at a fixed pace it keeps all evening, about one standard drink an hour, whether you're large or small, a seasoned drinker or not. And here's the strange part almost nobody expects. For a body that has been drinking heavily for years, that clean, empty bloodstream is the single most dangerous place it can be. The alcohol is gone. The changes it carved into the brain are still there, suddenly running with nothing left to push against. The drinking, in a sense, was the easy part. The absence is where the body's oldest survival machinery has to fight to keep you steady. So what actually happens? Hour by hour and then week by week once the drinking stops? Does the liver truly repair itself, and how fast can it really move? Why are the first 3 days without alcohol more dangerous for a heavy drinker than the drinking ever appeared to be? And when does the body finally cross the line from merely surviving the absence to genuinely healing inside it? To answer honestly, we have to follow the clock from the last sip downward, one system at a time, beginning with the alcohol still circulating in your blood. For the first hour after a drink, the work is already underway inside the liver, which handles close to 90% of all the alcohol you take in. Only a small remainder leaves through the breath, the sweat, and the urine, which is the entire basis of a breathalyzer. The rest is dismantled in 2 chemical steps, and those steps matter more than the drink itself. First, an enzyme called alcohol dehydrogenase converts ethanol into a compound named acetaldehyde. Acetaldehyde is the real poison in the room. It is up to 30 times more toxic than the alcohol you actually drank, and it is a recognized carcinogen. The pounding head and turning stomach of a hangover are largely this one molecule circulating while the body scrambles to clear it. A second enzyme, aldehyde dehydrogenase, then converts the acetaldehyde into harmless acetate, which breaks down into carbon dioxide and water and simply leaves. The liver works at a steady rate of about 1 drink per hour, and it cannot be hurried. Coffee does nothing. A cold shower does nothing. Tolerance does not speed the enzymes at all. It only dulls how drunk you feel while the same slow chemistry grinds on underneath. So by the time you wake, the alcohol from an ordinary evening is essentially cleared. If your drinking was only occasional, the story could nearly end right here. If it was heavy and daily, the clearing of that alcohol is the exact moment the real event begins. To understand why, you have to see what the alcohol had been doing to the brain every single night. Alcohol works by pressing on 2 opposite systems at once. It amplifies GABA, the brain's main calming signal, the chemical brake, and it suppresses glutamate, the main exciting signal, the accelerator. That push is the warm, loosened, slowed down feeling of a drink. A brain that receives it once recovers by morning. A brain that receives it every night for years does something far more consequential. It adapts. It quietly turns down its own production of GABA, and it builds extra glutamate receptors, straining to hold itself at a normal level against a nightly flood of sedative. On the surface, the person feels ordinary. Underneath, the brain has rebuilt its entire chemistry around the constant presence of alcohol. Now take the alcohol away. The brake is weakened, the accelerator is oversized, and nothing is pressing the pedal down anymore. The whole system lurches toward overexcitement. Within 6 to 12 hours of the last drink, the first signs surface. A fine tremor in the hands, a sheen of sweat, racing anxiety, a stomach that will not settle, a night with no sleep anywhere in it. In heavier cases, the excitement keeps climbing. Seizures can strike between 6 and 48 hours out, with the risk peaking around the first full day. And in the window from 48 to 72 hours, a small share of people, roughly 3 to 5 in every 100, tip into delirium tremens, a storm of confusion, fever, and unstable heart rhythm that can kill. This is a genuine medical emergency, and it is the reason a dependent person stopping alcohol is a matter for doctors and monitoring, not willpower in a locked door. And here the body does something that feels almost like cruelty. Each time a person drinks heavily, stops, and withdraws, the brain grows a little more sensitized to the swing. Doctors call it kindling. The next withdrawal can arrive faster and hit harder than the one before. The seizures more likely, the storm more severe. It means the people who have tried most often to quit are sometimes handed the roughest road out, punished by their own nervous system for the very act of stopping. Picture what that does to a single person. Someone who has quit a dozen times, alone at home on the third night, certain the hardest part is behind them because the bottle is finally empty. And it is exactly then, with the alcohol long gone from the blood, that the body lurches closest to the edge. The people who love them will say afterward that they seem to be doing so well. That is the trap in one sentence. Here the danger arrives, wearing the face of progress. The drink was never the whole danger. Taking it away from a brain rebuilt around it becomes a danger all its own. But survive that early stretch, and the same brain that made those days so violent begins almost immediately to settle back down. The first place you may notice the turn is sleep, and at first the news is strange. Alcohol had been suppressing your REM-sleep, the dreaming stage, for as long as you drank. With the alcohol gone, the brain repays the debt all at once in what is called a REM rebound. The earliest sober nights can flood with dreams so vivid and so odd, they wake you. Sometimes nightmares, sometimes drinking dreams so realistic you surface convinced you have relapsed. It can feel like sleep is getting worse instead of better. It is actually reorganizing itself. Across the first week or two, that wild rebound smooths out, the deep and dreaming stages fall back into their proper order, and something quiet happens that heavy drinkers often have not felt in years. You wake up genuinely rested. The morning fog lifts, hydration returns, and the body stops spending every night half processing a drug. While the brain reorganizes, an organ you cannot feel at all is carrying out the most dramatic repair of the entire timeline. Alcohol makes the liver store fat. In heavy drinkers, the cells swell with it, a condition called steatosis, the first rung on the ladder towards serious liver disease. Stop drinking completely, and that fat clears with startling speed. In many heavy drinkers, hepatic steatosis resolves within roughly 2 to 3 weeks, the liver cells emptying back toward normal, the tissue under a microscope looking healthy again. The enzymes that leak into the blood when the liver is inflamed, the ones a doctor tracks as ALT, AST, and GGT, drift back toward baseline over about a month. The liver is one of the only organs in the human body that genuinely regenerates, swapping damaged cells for new ones, and it does this silently, in the dark, asking nothing of you except the absence of the poison. At the same time, the heart begins to ease. Alcohol raises blood pressure in direct proportion to how much you drink, and within about a month of stopping, that pressure drifts back down, lifting a steady load off the arteries and the heart muscle behind them. By the 1 month mark, all of this stops being a promise and becomes something you can measure. Researchers have taken moderate to heavy drinkers, asked them to stop for a single month, and tested their bodies carefully before and after. Insulin resistance improved, blood pressure fell, weight came down, even blood markers tied to cancer risk moved in the healthier direction. In one small study built on that design, the shift was steep. Liver fat down around 15%, blood sugar down close to a quarter, a few pounds gone, all from removing a single substance for a few weeks. Nothing was added, no drug, no supplement, no punishing regimen. The body was simply allowed to stop defending itself against a daily toxin, and it spent the freed up effort quietly putting itself back in order. Give it longer still, and the repair reaches the places that take the most time to mend. The brain, which physically shrinks under years of heavy drinking, begins regaining volume within the first couple of weeks, partly as cells rehydrate and inflammation drains away, and then keeps rebuilding across the following 6 to 12 months. The frontal cortex, the seat of judgment and self-control, thickens again. New connections form. The mental fog that many drinkers quietly mistake for their own personality lifts to reveal sharper thinking underneath it. The heart's rhythm steadies, and the racing, skipping pattern of atrial fibrillation that heavy drinking provokes, sometimes nicknamed holiday heart, returns less often and takes longer to come back once alcohol is out of the picture. And because acetaldehyde, that toxic middle step, is a carcinogen, the long-run risk of several cancers slowly declines with sustained abstinence. That final benefit is only honest if it is described honestly. It accrues over months and years, not overnight, and if the drinking went on long enough, some damage never fully reverses. But the direction of travel across nearly every system in the body points one clear way once the drinking stops. So circle back to where we began. Does the body really heal when you quit? It does, on a schedule so consistent you can almost set a clock by it. The blood runs clear in 12 hours. The brain is at its most dangerous across the first 3 days. Sleep reorganizes over the first 2 weeks. The liver's fat is gone in 3. The whole metabolism reads measurably reset within a month, and the brain and heart are still rebuilding a full year on. The catch is the paradox we opened with. For a body that has been rebuilt around alcohol, the hardest stretch is neither the drinking nor the healing. It is the narrow, dangerous bridge between them. Those first days when a brain running without its brake has to relearn how to hold itself steady with nothing to lean on. That is why stopping, for anyone who drinks heavily, is a medical event and never a dare. And it opens a stranger question underneath. If the body can undo this much harm from a substance we choose to pour on purpose, what is it quietly repairing from the things we never chose to take in at all? That thread is the one we will pull next. Subscribe, and we will keep taking one hidden mechanism apart every